Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your latest instalment of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans. Just another quick one, of course, you can get us all over at the website, gersnet.co.uk, and on Twitter at Gersnet Online. On the website, you can obviously visit the forum, and we've got a weekly podcast as well. And of course, all of our content is free. We're here tonight just to dissect yesterday's 4-0 league victory over Livingston at Ibrox. But just before we do that, we need to go in and mention our sponsors, and that is Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company, and they've been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years. We're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at www.forestprecisioneng.com, and you can also visit the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge, which is a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand at Ibrox. For more information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. And just before I introduce my guests as well, a little Gersnet announcement as well. It's been quite a big weekend for the podcast. We managed to whiz past our first million views on YouTube, which Alec Anderson is extremely proud of and taking all the credit for. So fair play to him for that. And also yesterday we managed to have our first post-match reaction pod from inside Ibrox, where Dougie done a great pod just reviewing the game. So that is something that we're going to be looking to bring you more of this season. But now it's time to introduce my guests. First up, Ross Bennett. Ross, don't think I've been on with you for a while, mate. How you doing?
I'm very well. It's been a long summer. Absolutely thrilled. You know, I spent best part of 2 months gagging for the football to come back, and then we balls it up against Kilmarnock. But thankfully, normal service has resumed. I'm happy to be getting back into the swing of things. Absolutely.
And Mr. Gary Valentine, big game Gary, how you doing, mate?
Bad, mate. How's yourself?
Not too bad. Enjoyed the Gersnet team night out last night. It was very good in New Edmonton House, so aye, it was good. But now we'll crack on and talk about the game. Gary, may as well just start with you. 4-0, pretty comfortable in the end. There was a wee sort of dodgy moment, if you like, where Shinnie, I think, had a chance. But all in all, it was a comfortable one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Only concern is that it's taken us so long to kind of put the game out of sight. I think that was one of our problems last Tuesday as well. But yes, it's loads of positives to take away from it. As you say, there was maybe a 5-10 minute spell that Livingston had a couple of chances. And at 1-0, that's always quite dodgy. But we managed to get the second goal eventually. And then, as normally happens, the other team kind of collapses, and then we got another couple as well. So it's good to see some guys getting on the score sheet, the newer players and things like that. So yeah, all round a good day, I'd say.
No, it was, and a clean sheet as well. Jack Butland's first one in a Rangers jersey. I mean, Ross, I was saying yesterday, obviously it's great getting a 4-0 win, scoring 3 goals in the last 10 minutes or so. I think the next stage for us, where we want to get to, is we want to have that last 10-minute spell in the first 10 or 20 minutes of games and just get the game killed early on instead of having those sort of wee nervy moments towards the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And arguably we could and should have done that against Servette on Wednesday when we started really, really well and I just couldn't keep up that level of intensity. And I think I can remember being on some shows with you guys last season at various points where we were talking about how in phases of the games we looked really good, and in phases of the games we would fall away. And one of the biggest problems I think that Van Bronckhorst had as Rangers manager was he couldn't coax a 90-minute performance out of the team. And you could argue that was the same yesterday, where we obviously had a really, really strong end to the game, but for large parts it was a little bit flat, arguably. It was definitely the same against Servette, where we started really well and then fell away and kind of ebbed and flowed in and out of it. So it was comfortable. It was the absolutely deserved and the right result. And as Gary says, I think some players that will have done then the world of good to get on the score sheet and experience a happy crowd at Ibrox, because the crowd at Ibrox on Wednesday, it wasn't overjoyed, I suppose, with that result. So it's a good day at the office. Obviously, Celtic are 2 wins from 2, but they do look vulnerable. I think it's fair to say in both of their games so far, they've looked quite vulnerable. So what's important now is after that slip up against Kilmarnock last week is we need to start to put some momentum together.
No, absolutely, Gary. I mean, Ross mentioned it there. About Celtic not looking at their best just now. The issue with that is, but they're still managing to win games. They go up to Pittodrie today. Well, I was about to say a difficult game for them, but it's a guaranteed 12 points every year, isn't it, up there for them? But traditionally one of the difficult places to go. They manage to grind out a result when they're not playing well. Let's not mess about. Celtic will get better, but we will also get better as well. But I don't want to be all singing, all dancing, everything's great, everything's fine. I've probably been quite negative this week, which is unlike me, because normally I'm quite positive about things, but I think I'm just really sick and tired of getting into this sort of, nuance and mindset of constantly failing, constantly losing, and, just trying to paper over the cracks with, talking about, goals and assists and this, that, and the next thing. I just want a Rangers team to go out, win games of football, win trophies and win leagues. That's all we want. So we will get better. As I said to Ross, but it's about trying to do that last 10 minutes in the sort of first 10 minutes. How much do you think the introduction of Ravi Matondo and Sima changed that yesterday?
Yeah, obviously massively. They came on and we scored with 3 goals after they came on. Then the day, that's what Beale's wanting. He's wanting players with pace that can come on, and it's not just players with pace, it's players with pace that are fresh when other teams tiring. And I think that's the perfect example yesterday. It's what happens when you've got those kind of options you can bring off the bench. I dare say if they were to start the game, they wouldn't have had the same impact. I think that the timing was perfect, and it also helps that we can make those 5 substitutes. So it's not just a case of maybe keeping players for certain moments. You can change basically half your team, and obviously our squad's better than Livingston, so it should give us a good impact to do that at the right time, and it worked to a treat yesterday.
It did, and Gary, one thing that I kind of noticed as well, comparing it to last week at Rugby Park, the changes that Beale made were pretty light for light, not just in terms of position, but the type of player that he's bringing on as well. For example, the Jack coming on for Lundstrom and whatnot. Whereas the changes that we made yesterday, whilst I suppose the system never really changed that much, you were taking off guys who, like the likes of Dessers, for example, might come on to him later, who was a wee bit slow and rugged, and you're bringing on the likes of Ravi Matondo and Sima, who are pacey, powerful, can get in behind. And how important is it that, whilst Beale, may have his way of playing, and I still don't think we're seeing that come to fruition yet, but hopefully it will. But we also need to have backup plans as well, where in situations like yesterday, if things aren't completely going our way, we can make impact subs and change the game.
Definitely, at the end of the day, what day variety. And the thing that really frustrated me last week against Kilmarnock was that it seemed to be back to, if you were just to take a guy, no tell them about the changes in the last 12 months, you think that was a Giovanni Van Bronckhorst performance. The balls were going out wide to the fullbacks, crosses in, big defenders getting it away. Whereas yesterday, we kept the same shape, but we just changed the kind of tactic, and it was direct. We were playing inside a lot more, I felt. Lammers was getting on the ball quite a lot. And that's what you want. You need variety. And that's what Beale said that he's wanting to do. He wants that front four, or whatever you want to call it, to be able to interchange and cause chaos. And that's what he's doing. If you've got 4 or 5 guys running at you and you don't know, and then the next time it's the same 5 in a different way, it's hard to pick up. And that's what you're wanting to do. But last week it was very, very predictable. It was just the same old every time. And that just played into Kilmarnock's hands. Because at least we've made the changes on Saturday, and it's changed the game. It's not just been the same tactic. So yeah, I'm happy that they've done it.
Mm-hmm. Ross, I mean, what's your thoughts on sort of Beale's overall system and philosophy as such? I mean, like I said earlier, I'm still a wee bit unsure of it at the moment. I think you can see at times what he's trying to do, but at other times you can't. I mean, like we said last week, it was limp. It was, at times a bit lazy, just uninspiring, doing the same thing over and over again. It kind of reminded me a wee bit of that St Johnstone game at McDermott Park last year, just constant crosses into the box. And as I say, the changes that he made were like for like. How important is it that, like I said to Gary, we're capable of bringing on players that are actually capable of doing different things and changing a game up?
Yeah, well, just on that point, I think that's, we look at the recruitment we've had this year. The recruitment in this summer has been quite rightly so far focused on different types of attacking player. We've brought in Lammers, Dessers, Sima, Dowell. They are creative players or should be goal scorers. So we do have options to change games, and as you and Gary both say, that Sima and Matondo came on yesterday, different types of players for the players that were brought off, and it changed the game. That being said, to go back to your original question about the style of play or the structure of the system, I don't know. I'm still holding out hope that Michael Beale is this tactical genius that we all try and say that he is. Like, he's the guy who went to Brazil. He's the guy that's written books about tactics and formations. So I'm personally not even going to try and understand what sort of system he's going to play, because I won't get it, even if I spend the effort on it. So I feel that whatever system he's trying to play, whatever tactic it is, whatever message he's trying to get across, it's probably too early to judge, because he's brought in a lot of players so far, particularly middle to front, players that he's not worked with before, players that have come from many different leagues, from many different countries. So I think it's going to take a bit of time actually for all of this to gel. And we probably knew that. I think when you take a step back and analyse football rationally, you know that when you bring in 5, 6, 7, 8 first-team players, then there is going to be a bit of a bedding-in period. So I think it's probably actually too early to start asking questions about what kind of football Beale's trying to play, because the players probably need a bit of time to get to grips with the whole thing. That being said, I think that's where having different types of players and having better strength and depth comes from. The problem we've had over the last 2 seasons is we haven't had any strength and depth up top, whether that's because you couldn't rely on some of our strikers, whether that's for consistency reasons with the likes of Fashion Sakala, who kind of blew hot and cold, or injury reasons with Kamar Roof. But now we have enough players and we have enough different types of players that whilst we're in this bedding in period and whilst the players are getting used to the message that Mick Beale's trying to get across, we should have enough different ways of playing to get it over the line.
Yeah, Gary, that's a good point that Ross makes about the strength and depth, and that is something that we probably have lacked the last couple of seasons. Well, maybe not in terms of squad numbers, but just with injuries and stuff like that. But, take yesterday, even if that game's 0-0, we're crying out for a goal. Look to the bench, you can bring on Hadji, you can bring on Roof, you can bring on Sima, you can bring on Matondo, you can bring on Dowell. That's pretty quality strength and depth. And I know, Matondo, and rightly so, has had his critics, but at the end of the day, he's still someone who costs us £3 million. He's accumulated, probably 15 to 20 million pound worth of transfers at the age of 21, 22. So there is obviously something there if he's managed to do that. And Sima as well, he's a guy playing for a Premier League club in Brighton, and we all know how well their recruitment's been the last couple of seasons. So, it is important to have that strength and depth, and it's something, that I'm glad we've got now, Gary.
Yeah, see that, I think especially in Matondo's case, he should be given a blank slate at the start of the season. It's maybe hard at his age coming into a new club, big transfer fee and maybe a bit of expectation. But if Beale thinks he can do a job, then we've got to support him, and all he can do is do what he done yesterday, and I'm sure he'll have a lot of fans getting on his side.
No, absolutely. Sort of moving on then, yesterday, don't know if you've seen, but a certain Mr. Fashion Sakala scored on his debut for a Saudi Arabian team whose name I'm not even going to try and butcher. No, I'm not doing it. It'll be Al something. That's as good as
Al Bundy.
Aye, something like that anyway. But Gary, I was a bit gutted when Fashion left. I like him. I think he was a really likeable person, always played with a smile on his face, always gave 100% as well, which I think is something that, certainly in the last season or two, a lot of players could have taken lessons from him on that one. I know he had his critics, and I understand it. Big moments at Hampden against Celtic where he's missing open goals. I would kind of caveat that by saying Alfredo Morelos was a hero of the fans, who also missed open goals against Celtic. I think he only scored 3 goals against Celtic in 6 years or something like that. So, it's not an issue that was, something that happens to just Fashion Sakala. But I was a bit gutted that he's left. I think he's someone that could have offered something. And to be fair, if it's free, 4 million quid, could we have got a wee bit more money? I don't know, but I'm a wee bit gutted that he's left, Gary. What about your feelings on it?
Yeah, I didn't mind Fashion Sakala. You knew what his strengths were, knew what his weaknesses were. But at the end of the day, if you're signing a guy in a free transfer and selling him for potentially £4 million, I think that's just the business that you've got to do. But if we can manage to use that money to strengthen other positions, possibly a centre back, then I think it's a very good bit of business. I said previously that you need guys to kind of score against the rest, which he seems to be able to do. But if you look at the depth you've got up front now, would they really get even on the bench at the moment? I'm not too sure. So I think it was a good deal to get rid of him.
That's a fair point, actually. And we did just speak about the strength and depth. How would he fit into the squad? I mean, Ross, what's your thoughts on Fashion leaving?
I was actually really sorry to see him go, and no one would delude themselves to say that he's the best or most gifted player that Rangers had or would ever have. But I'm looking at some stats now, and if these stats that I've got here are correct, last season in the league, he scored 12 goals and had 8 assists. So that's 20 goal contributions, let's say, in 29 appearances. If that's correct, for a player who's not very good, it's good numbers, right? And what worries me is, even let's take it as 12 goals in 29 appearances. What sort of money do you have to spend to guarantee that return? As Gary mentioned, that's a player we brought in for free, and he didn't necessarily hit the ground running, and he did blow hot and cold, and yeah, he probably should have had a lot more than those 12 goals with the opportunities that he missed. But he still scored 12 goals in a team that was actually sort of struggling to score goals. So what worries me is that we've let him go, and we've brought in Dessers, Lammers, Danilo. Are they guaranteed to replace those goals? And we certainly hope that they would, with the money that's been spent on them and the pedigree that they've got, the clubs that they've played for and the leagues that they've played in. Certainly hope that they'd replace those goals. But I was sorry to see him go. I think for the football club moving forward, as we try and challenge for the league again, as we try and have a better showing in the Champions League, he's probably not the calibre of player that we need. But he just seemed to buy into the club. He seemed to enjoy it. The fans took to him, and he did have good output. He was the one player, maybe Scott Wright as well to a lesser extent, but he was really the one player that I felt, if we had a game like Kilmarnock last week, where we are just creating nothing is happening, he's the player that I thought could come on and change it and create something. Probably more often than not because he didn't know what he was going to do. And if he didn't know what he could do, then the defender certainly didn't. But he was still a kind of player that would do something. It was not the thing that we all expected him to do, but he would do something and create something. So, yeah, sad that he's gone. You'd hope, on paper, we've replaced him with better players and with depth as well. So we should be fine. But yeah, I think he had a good season last year.
Yeah, he certainly goes with our best wishes anyway, Fashion Sakala. I mean, Gary Ross made a really interesting point there about his numbers and his contribution for a free transfer. Like, how much would, 12 goals and, 8 assists in 29 games, how much would that cost you? You're talking about 4 or 5 million quid. Scott Wright, look, he gets a lot of flack. I think he certainly does try, but his numbers are just nowhere near good enough to be, playing for Rangers consistently. And it's kind of something that, I look at Celtic, and I know there's a lot of people saying, Celtic are minted, they're, far ahead financially than Rangers, which I don't necessarily think is true. Rangers and Celtic are competing in the same market for players. I think the difference is that Celtic could probably sign more of those players. I think from their side, Haksabanovic is a good example. I've used that one before. If you compare the likes of him to a Scott Wright, he comes in at Celtic and scores maybe 5 or 6 goals, a couple of assists, and he's got reasonable output. Scott Wright gets a couple of assists last season, no goals. Haksabanovic cost Celtic £2 million. Scott Wright cost Rangers a development fee. So if Celtic are paying £2 million for a guy to score 12 goals, how much would we need to pay to get a guy that's going to get the numbers that Fashion Sakala got? So, it is about that balance. But one thing that was good about yesterday, 4 goals, 4 different goal scorers, all scoring their first goals for Rangers as well. And if Cifuentes' goal had stood as well, that would have been 5. I don't think I've ever seen that before, where 4 players score their first goal like in the same game, like all 4 goal scorers do. And it would have been even more weird if it was 5. But one thing that I really took from that is the spread of goals from across the pitch. And we've played 3 games now, we've scored 6 goals, we've got 6 different goal scorers. So, whilst we're going to miss guys like Fashion's contribution, hopefully the likes of Cantwell and Hadji and Lawrence when he comes back, Roof, Danilo Dessers, Tav, etc., hopefully their numbers can sort of even out and, basically take us up to the level that Sakala was getting last year in terms of numbers anyway, Gary.
Yeah, but your point about everyone scoring their first goal, that'll be because we've changed very near the full team. Like from the Beale's first game against Hibs, Tavernier's only player that survived for that. So that shows you, what was that, last December? That shows you the amount of change that we have made, which was needed. To answer your question about the goals for different areas, I think we need to look at the 55 season, as in that's the only kind of evidence we've got for success. The one thing we did do that season was we signed quite a few forwards, and they all contributed, whether it was Roof, Hadji, Itten, Morelos. That's what we needed, and hopefully that we can replicate that this year. I think that's what he's waiting for, to be honest. As I said, you can't rely on just 1 or 2 strikers to score goals or 4 players to score goals. Morelos didn't do it last year, Kent didn't do it last year, so that's why I think he was happy just to let them go. I think they'd had their time, so he's replaced them with younger guys, hopefully hungrier guys, and I'm quietly optimistic that it'll work. It'll certainly get goals all over the park, as we've seen yesterday.
Yeah, Ross, Gary mentioned Ryan Kent there. I mean, I've seen some comments by the manager, last week, which I found quite interesting, saying that he was looking at signing a kind of replacement for Kent. Maybe he feels that we've not, made a light-for-light replacement. What's your thoughts on that? I think it would be quite clever to try and bring someone in that, I don't think you're ever going to get the quality that Kent gave you for the most part of his Rangers career in the market that we're looking at, but certainly a guy that's capable of coming in, scoring a few goals and being able to create some magic, more so in the big European games.
Yeah, I'm actually on the fence about it. I think, as Gary said there, we have got players now across the park who should be capable of scoring goals. One of you mentioned Tom Lawrence a minute ago. I mean, that's he will be like a new signing when he comes back in, and he did look very, very promising in the short glimpses that we got of him last season. I would suspect that with the amount of outlay that we've had on transfers this summer, I suspect that there's not a huge amount of money left to be spent, and maybe that will be dependent on Champions League qualification. I'm not sure. I would think there are actually other areas of the park that are more of a priority. I still think. It sounds like Ridvan isn't really going to cut it, and that's not worked out. So I think a left back is needed. I think a centre half is needed as well. So I'd actually rather see those 2 positions get filled before we went looking for a winger. You would think that Yanis Hadji, Tom Lawrence, Cantwell, Dowell, Matondo, Scott Wright. Now, maybe the problem is that we've got so many of those kind of attacking midfield type players that haven't necessarily worked out. Maybe we need to shift some of them before we could bring someone else in. But each and every one of those should be capable of doing a job first and foremost domestically. So if it's a case of unlimited funds, yeah, absolutely. Let's try and shift some of those guys out and bring in what was it? Ryan Kent cost us 7.5 million, something like that. If the money's there, then go for it. But I would rather see it spent elsewhere first.
Yeah, we do definitely need a couple of defensive reinforcements. And speaking of the defence, Gary, I mentioned him earlier, James Tavernier. He's someone who, he's just not really hit the ground running this season, in my opinion. Fair play to him. He scored a big penalty, obviously, on Wednesday. But he just looks way off it just now. A yard or two off the pace. He's getting beaten quite easily. He's also struggling to take the ball past people as well. And now, I don't know if this is maybe a regression in him, or if it's maybe the style of play that Beale's wanting him to play at the moment. But he just looks way off it. And, I asked Michael Beale the question at the presser yesterday, just what's your thoughts on Tav's performances this season? And he completely shot me down. Like, yeah, everything's fine with Tav. We've got no problems whatsoever with him. Boom, next question. So, I still don't know, but a lot of people have been saying it to me recently. There's obviously a debate on the captaincy, which, there's probably no point in going into that because we know that that's not going to change. So, we're as well just supporting the manager and his decision on that one. But what's been your thoughts on his performances so far? I just don't think he's been up to scratch this season at the moment.
I have to say, I actually agree with our manager on this one. I think our full team has to be playing 100%. And I think it'll just be a matter of time until we all get used to the new players and what the manager's looking for us to do. I'm sure it will all work out fine, but I've certainly got no problems with James Tavernier, and certainly as a captain as well. I can't say a bad word about him. I really can't. I love him.
We all love him deep down, don't we? Ross, what's your thoughts on the captain's performances so far this year?
He's not been the captain that we saw in the 55 season, or he's not been the player, I should say, that we saw in the 55 season. I wouldn't say he's been miles off it. I don't know. I mean, is he a confidence player? Maybe that's playing a part of it, and he certainly does receive his fair share of criticism. So I think that probably affects him quite a lot. At least once a season, there's a question around Tav saying he should be dropped. We should play Adam Devine. He shouldn't be captain. He should stop playing PlayStation. All of these things, they come up once a year. I'm not too concerned at the moment. I think let's give it some time. There's whether it comes down to replacing him with who we've got. All we've really got is Adam Devine, play it right back, or it means go out to the transfer market and try and bring someone else in. Well, as I just said, I think money needs to be invested elsewhere rather than going to a right back. So, he's not been at his best, but as Gary says, there's quite a few that have not been at their best so far this season. So he kind of gets a pass for me.
I just think he has been way off it. I don't know. Maybe he's 31 now. I know. Look, I think he's been a great professional. He obviously keeps himself fit. He's rarely injured, but he does have a lot of miles on the clock. And you've seen it with guys in the past, like Wayne Rooney, Fernando Torres, bursting onto the scene when they're, 19, 20. Well, Rooney was 16 because he was just a completely different animal. But by the time they get to 30, 31, they're absolutely knackered. And I think that's kind of what's concerning me about Tav. It's, I don't want to use the word unfit because it would be lazy of me to say that, and obviously as fit, be passing tests and what have you, and be looked after every day at Rangers. So it's not that, but he does just look a yard or two off it, and maybe it is could be the new style of play, trying to play with different players and whatnot. But yeah, hopefully he continues anyway. Certainly we'll still need him for his dead balls, because he is a dead ball specialist, as we know. Last season was probably his best season in terms of free kicks. Some of the ones that he scored was ridiculous too at Livi, obviously the one at Celtic Park. So we'll probably get a penalty on Tuesday anyway after a VAR decision, a handball or something like that, and then he'll score again and shut me up. And hopefully he does do that. I'd love nothing more than for that to happen. But Gary...
Hey, can I just come in a bit, Tav, just before we move on? You've got to remember, we were talking about Sakala earlier, about numbers and contributions. Show me where moving Tav for somebody else that gives you that numbers, how much would that kind of player cost?
That's true.
I really think he's one of these players. He's an easy target, probably because he's been there that long. Ross was saying earlier about people wanting him replaced for Adam Devine. There was fans wanting Lee Hodgson to play in front of him at one point. It's ridiculous the abuse he's had.
Hey, come on, Lee Hodgson get man of the match against Germany in Euro 2016. Come on.
I don't even know if that's true or no. I remember Warburton said over saying somebody at the European Championships were all salivating, and then he walked in. But yeah, I think, as I say, in all seriousness, what you get for Tavernier far outweighs any negatives in his game, and he'll be one of the players when he finally leaves, we'll look back and say what a player he was. He really is.
I think so as well. I just think he's not been great the last few weeks. But hey ho, we'll move on to Tuesday anyway. Ross, I'll come on to you first then on it. Obviously it's massive, for me. Champions League is the Champions League. It's it's the pinnacle of football. I don't understand these people that turn around and say I would rather Rangers were in the Europa League because I prefer the Europa League. Like that, yeah, the Europa League song's better anyway. It's not really. We all know that. I mean, the Europa League tune is a bit catchy, but it's not as good as a Champions League song. I want to be in the Champions League, not just in terms of finances, which we know is going to be massive, but for prestige as well. And I can understand fans maybe being a wee bit, pessimistic after we get gubbed last year in every game. But the way that I'm coming from it is we're Rangers, okay? We should be in the Champions League every year, in my opinion. We were one of the founding clubs of the tournament back in the day. We shouldn't be going in being scared to get battered off, Man City or Liverpool or whatever. We should be going, trying to get the best that we can do and try and build on it. I mean, Tuesday's massive in my opinion, Ross. I just think, and as well, it's a £5 million playoff. So even if we get knocked out in the next round by PSV, just for winning on Tuesday, you get £5 million, and that can be reinvested in the squad. So for me, it's absolutely massive that we can negotiate this time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when people say Europa League's better, or I'd rather be in the Europa League, I think what people are saying is I want to be competing and I want to be winning. Some of the best moments I've had in football were in that Europa League run a couple of seasons ago. There's a photo behind me of the stands at Ibrox that night that we beat Leipzig, and it's just that was the most extraordinary moment I've ever had as a football fan. So I think that, when people have come from that experience into what we had in the Champions League last year, I can see why people were pining for 2021. 22. So I kind of get that, but what I want to see us competitive on Europe's biggest stage. So it has to be the Champions League. There is no reason, when you look at some of the teams, there's no reason why we can't go there and be competitive. I think that it was a real shame how we, the account of ourselves that we gave last year in the Champions League. It wasn't good enough, and it didn't really look. We didn't look brave enough I think during any of those ties. But you're right. Tuesday night is massive for the football club. If we can qualify for the Champions League again this season, it shows that last season wasn't a fluke. It sort of cements that is our rightful place as one of the top European football clubs. I believe it's where we deserve to be. It's where we as a fan base deserve to be. Look at where we've been. Look at what we've been through, and the numbers that we are, without a doubt, the best fans in the world. When you look at what we've supported through, and I think we deserve an opportunity again to display that across Europe in Europe's premier competition. It also pisses me off no end when you're in the Europa League playing on a Thursday, and it means that you get absolutely no Saturday home games. That just sort of screws with my weekend schedule a wee bit. Because the flights from London to Glasgow and back on a Sunday are nowhere near as good as they are on a Saturday. Look, Champions League, it's huge. PSV will be a really tricky tie. I know obviously we got by them last year, but they are a different animal. Obviously they signed Malik Tillman in the week, so that's an interesting little subplot there. We should have enough for Servette regardless of it being in Geneva. I understand good fans, they create a good atmosphere, etc. But we have gone to harder places. We've gone to the likes of Belgrade. We've gone to Leipzig. We've gone to Dortmund and got good results. We should have enough to get by Servette. We should be going with more of an advantage than we are, and that's a shame. But I think it was clear as well in yesterday's team selection, he'd made some choices with an eye on Tuesday. Connor Goldson being left out, for example. That was unthinkable last season or 2 seasons ago, Connor Goldson missing a game. I'm pleased to see that we're in a position that we can do that. I think I read today somewhere that John Lundstrom isn't travelling, that he's staying behind. So I'm actually not too disappointed in that, because he's the one player I think for about 18 months now has been seriously off it. But yeah, look, Tuesday's massive for us, and it may well be. I think when we were trying to qualify for the Champions League under Steven Gerrard, and we got knocked out, was it by Malmo? I think that seemed to hasten Gerrard's exit, and there were definitely rumours around that time that he'd been promised investment, or he'd been promised more players if we were to qualify for the Champions League. That's probably where we are again now, is that Beale has probably used up his first kind of tranche of transfer funds, and he's been promised more if he can get us into the Champions League. So I hope he can do it.
Yeah, I mean, the finances for this are huge, Gary. I know last year we didn't make as much money as we all thought we would from the Champions League because of, I think, the way that 10-year coefficient works. If we manage to get in it this year, it'll be a lot more money than we got last year. And, fingers crossed we get more prize money than last year. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult. All we need is a draw. But it's massive, and Peter Lawwell said it at Celtic, in order for them to maintain their financial model, they need to qualify for the Champions League 3 out of 5 seasons. Now, if they obviously qualified for it last year, they've qualified for it automatically again this year. We cannot continue to give them more of an advantage as what they already have over us financially. So we need to at least match what they do in Europe in terms of, progression. So if they're in the Champions League, we need to get into the Champions League. Otherwise, you're talking about you're going to be minimum 15, 20 million quid worse off than them, and you really don't want to go into a new season and, in that position.
Yeah, that's it. As we've spoken about before, Celtic have got that advantage straight away just due to the larger stadium we've got. If they continue to get Champions League football, they'll continue to a financial gap that we've got to try and close, whether it's selling our better players or whatever. But you mentioned earlier about some people saying they'd rather be in the Europa League. I'm kind of where Ross is, or what Ross was alluding to, that people just want to be competitive. As I've said in this pod before, modern football, I hate it. And it's that greed and elite that's there that are preventing like big teams like Rangers from getting any better. So in my opinion, getting to the Champions League is great, gives you money, gives you the prestige, but we're never going to qualify unless it's an absolute fluke into the latter stages of that tournament. So in an ideal world, you get a good draw, and then you can maybe fall into the Europa League later on. But they come back to the original point, getting that whatever millions it is to stay level with Celtic's a must. But I really worry about the next round, because I think if we do qualify, play PSV, I think that'll be a very, very tough match.
Yeah, it will be. And Malik Tillman, that's an interesting one. I was very disappointed to see him go to PSV of all teams, especially after his exploits in Eindhoven last year. Ross, lastly on this topic with yourself, you kind of alluded to earlier about the Europa League and playing Thursdays and whatnot, and it messing up with people's schedules. For me as well, that's another thing where I hate going into a game on a Sunday when they're playing on a Saturday, because straight away they've got a chance to go out and go 3 points ahead of you. Now, obviously, you've got a game in hand, but I just want the points on the board. So at least if we're in the Champions League, it allows us to play our games, at the same time as Celtic. So they're not getting an advantage over that. And also as well, if we were to get into the Europa League and maybe go on another run like we did a couple of years ago, obviously that would be amazing, right? I'm not, I wouldn't knock it for a second, but we need to remember the impact that that's going to have on your domestic season as well. And history tells you the last 3 times that, teams in Scotland have gotten to the UEFA Cup Europa League final, you just don't win the league. It doesn't happen. It just seems that, you're so focused on that. When it gets to a certain point, maybe the quarterfinals, that's like all you can think about is like, we're at this stage, we can go to the final. Celtic in 2003 lost in the last day. Us in 2008 lost in the last day. Us in 2022, Celtic won it before, but I think it was only about 4 points in the end. So for me, not just, as I say, the finances of prestige, but from a domestic point of view, there could be a massive advantage to being in the Champions League as well.
That's assuming that we don't get to like the quarterfinals of the Champions League.
I take that as well.
Look, I think it's a really difficult question actually, because I remember back at the time when we got to like quarterfinals, semi-finals of the Europa League a couple of years ago, people were naturally asking that question of, would you rather win the league or win the Europa League, or would you rather win the league or get to the final of this? And both of those things are just so joyous. Winning 55 and getting to the Europa League final were both such wonderful experiences and great memories. Celtic getting to 3 in a row would be pretty bitter. So yeah, I wouldn't trade that European run for anything. I really wouldn't. But winning the league this year is more important than anything else now. So I do see where you're coming from. I'm not going to commit to saying I want us in the Champions League so that we get knocked out earlier, because I don't think that's in any of our nature or our DNA to say something like that. But winning the league this year is really, really important. So, but like I say, Champions League, more money, more investment in players, greater squad depth. We should have enough to do both, right? I don't know. Either way, we need to win the league.
We absolutely do. Ross, then I'll come to you first. Predictions for Tuesday. What are you saying?
Tuesday, I think it'll be tough. I think they will score, but I think we will also score. I think we'll probably get away with a 1 each, and I don't think it'll be easy. Obviously, they did well to get by the Belgians in the last round. They're no mugs. They had a lot of players missing last week that some of them are going to return for them. So I think we'll come away with a score draw and push on through.
Not bad. Gary, what about yourself, mate? What are you saying for Tuesday?
Yeah, I agree with Ross. 1 each, 2 each. I'd bite your hand off for that at the moment. Anything but a defeat would do me.
Oh, absolutely. Just, I'd take the draw and get through. Absolutely. But I don't know. I've got a sneaky feeling we'll win. I think we'll win 1-0. I'll go for a Tav pen, just like I predicted earlier. A wee handball, a wee penalty to Rangers. You absolutely love to see it. And, we'll definitely take that on Tuesday. But thanks very much for tuning in, guys. We're going to wrap up there. Let you enjoy what's left of this weekend. All that's left for me to do now is thank my guests for coming on. Gary, thanks very much for coming on, mate.
Thank you.
Louise and Ross as well. Thanks very much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
No problem at all, guys. Just a reminder, we will be back on Friday with a preview pod for the Morton Cup tie on Saturday, and hopefully we'll be talking about a certain Rangers versus PSV tie that could be happening that midweek as well. But that's all from me tonight, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.